The Name of the Game is presented by Bravo, the marketing arm of Ash Brokerage Corporation, the practice enhancement company. Welcome to Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game. Hi everyone, I'm your host, Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money gamer extraordinaire. We all know that senior living can be golden if you're prepared for medical and extended care events. But what happens if you don't use those benefits? It seems like you're just throwing money away. On today's show, we're featuring long-term care cash products that can really make a difference in your lifestyle that you'll lead in your retirement years. We're going to talk about this with national recognized retirement expert Bradley Gayheart. He says you may not have to lose money on your premiums if you don't use the benefits. Sound too good to be true? You might be able to get your cake and eat it too. In the G segment, it's game on as we get the facts on extended care in retirement. In the A segment, we'll talk about the benefits of long-term care cash products. In the M segment, we'll take our money mentor, Bradley Gayheart, and he'll walk you through the LTC key linked benefits. And in the E segment, it's game on as we learn the next steps to planning. Welcome to the show, Bradley.
Hey, thanks for having me, Steve.
I appreciate it. Listen, you've been in the business a long time, 20 plus years. Your father was into this whole sector of long-term care. And so basically you were born with a heart for geriatrics.
Absolutely.
I mean, I love it. I want to talk a little bit about, when we're talking about long-term care, I want to talk about the events that trigger it. Because a lot of people say, well, you know, what's the policy? Most policies, well, that's kind of uniform now. We already know what the 6 activities of daily living are. I'd like you to list them really quick, and then it's 2 out of those 6, right?
Yeah, it's 2 out of 6 activities of daily living.
So if I can't do what, this could trigger my policy.
So bathing, dressing, toileting, transferring, continence.
So I only need 2 of those. I can't participate any longer in those 2 events, and I could trigger my event.
Yeah, absolutely
my policy.
that, or severe cognitive impairment.
Now, when I'm looking at this, I'm trying to look at all the options that are out there right now. I look at options like Medicaid. People say to me all the time, and they write me when they see my articles out there, they say, hey, Steve, I'm just going to let the government, I'll just go to a government facility. Talk about that number.
Well, you know, I mean, right now, Medicaid's the largest spender for long-term care. When you use Medicaid or elect to use Medicaid, you have to spend down to Medicaid levels. So depending on the state that you live in, there's different levels. But basically, you've gotten rid of all of your assets and spent down to a level where you have no more assets available to you, and you become, for lack of a better term, a ward of the state. Yeah.
Now, Medicare doesn't take care of this.
You know, Medicare will fund about the first 120 days, but there's stipulations with respect of, you know, you have to be improving in your condition. It has to be something that you can recover from. You know, in the Medicare handbook, it specifically states that it does not cover for any aspect of custodial care. Really, most of your care rendered for long-term care events are custodial in nature. Therefore, Medicaid or Medicare really wouldn't cover much of anything.
Now, of course, we have Obamacare now. Is that going to be any part of this?
No, really, no way did they write anything in. They actually excluded the Class Act from that. So there's really nothing that they've done to enhance or help fund a long-term care event.
So we've talked about long-term care before. Last weekend, we talked about full individual products. This time, we're talking about individual linked products linked to life insurance and to annuities. Kind of a new idea.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, it's funny. The linked benefit strategy has been around for 20 or so years. It just, until prices on long-term care plans and some of the folks coming in and out of the marketplace over the past 5 to 10 years, and the traditional long-term care space has come to such an evolution. It wasn't appealing to go to these linked benefit strategies. Now, however, there's a lot of appeal in these linked benefit strategies, and it's definitely taking over the marketplace.
Well, throughout the show, we're going to explain some of the benefits of that, and I really appreciate the ability to have, maybe I'll look at long-term care as a standalone policy. I'll look at these new linked benefits, which are now becoming the trend. And I like this because you actually can't lose your money. And so if I don't have an event, I go, well, I paid all those premiums off for nothing. But in this case, if I don't use it, I don't lose it.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well, the beauty of a linked benefit strategy are the 3 benefits that you receive. The guaranteed death benefit, or the leverage for long-term care. So you can receive leverage on that single asset move of possibly 2.5 to 5 times. So you put in $100,000, you receive $450,000 for a long-term care event. And then finally, the liquidity aspect of these policies, the availability for you to go in and pull your premium dollars back out of these policies so that you can go invest it in some other asset class that you've elected to.
So when I'm triggering an event, I can't do 2 of these ADLs. Let's say I can't perform my own cooking, although probably my wife would think I can't cook now. So, and maybe another one is I can't transfer. I just can't drive any longer. So those are my 2. I have to have a physician actually sign off on that.
Yeah, what would happen is a physician would sign off on it, and then before the policy would start paying, the company, the insurance company would actually send somebody in to observe that household and make sure
to verify that you cannot perform these 2 ADLs, these activities of daily living.
Precisely.
Okay, so my physician says, yes, that's true. He files it. I have an elimination period, though, before they come in, right? I have an elimination, a waiting period.
Yeah, depending on how the policy is set up originally, you might have a 30 all the way to a 90-day elimination period. But the devil kind of lies in the details of these elimination periods. There's 2 types. There's a calendar day or a service day. Calendar day means that if you receive care on the one day, the calendar starts clicking off on your 90 days. Service days means you actually need to receive 90 days of care prior to the insurance company picking it up.
Well, if I did the math in my head just now, it sounds like the calendar way is the way to go.
It would be.
And the last thing I wanted to ask you about this is, I noticed that all people that are self-insuring, I look at the math on retirement modelings, it's really better for you to do this than not do it at all.
Well, in most cases it does make a lot of sense to apply leverage as opposed to self-insure. If you use your dollars, your $100,000, we can extend that to $450 for a long-term care event. So it makes a lot more sense to use leverage and somebody else's dollars to pay for an event as opposed to your own.
If you want more information on long-term care, just email me, steve.savant@ashbrokerage.com, and I'll email you our free quote questionnaire for long-term care insurance. The questionnaire will take about 13 minutes. Is your financial security during retirement worth 13 minutes? I'm sure it is. When we come back from the break, Bradley and I are going to walk you through the benefits of long-term care cash products in the A segment of our show.
Take a close look at your hard-earned dollar. How do you think your money's doing? Are you keeping an eye on it? Is it protected from taxes, inflation, and market risk? Over time, those Washingtons could become Franklins. With tax-advantaged indexed universal life, from one of the largest distributors of indexed universal life, Ash Brokerage.
Well, welcome back to the A segment. I'm Steve Savant, and just a heads up, before moving forward with any of the planning ideas on our show, always consult your tax advisor, legal counsel, and insurance professional. We're talking about the benefits of long-term care cash products. Well, Bradley, I want to talk about, because a lot of our consumers in our audience are really concerned about their retirement. They're concerned about long-term care, like we talked in the first segment. But I'm still trying to break out in my mind and the mind of our audience the difference between these traditional long-term care products, linked products, and I'm still trying to get my hand around the differences.
Well, when we're talking about private insurance, particularly traditional long-term care linked benefit, traditional long-term care was written on a health insurance base or platform. So they went to the states and they wrote a health insurance contract, which means the premiums aren't guaranteed. So the con against traditional long-term care has always been the rates can be increased at any time. And if I put my $3,000 a year in it for 15 to 20 years and then I pass away in the middle of the night, I'm not going to get any benefit out of it. However, traditional long-term care applies the most significant leverage. So if you bought, say, $200 a day, the cost of that $200 a day compared to a linked benefit strategy is going to be quite a bit more than what you're going to be able to afford in that linked benefit strategy because of the way the health insurance platform works and the ability for them to apply leverage out of that policy.
If I had, it sounds like if I had family history with a predisposition, not only for nursing home care, but maybe even a disease that follows in my generations, it sounds like maybe then I would maybe possibly look at traditional long-term care because the actual value and the numbers are there for that. But again, if we don't use it, we lose it.
We lose it.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, if you had that crystal ball and you could stare into it and you knew you were going to have an event or not going to have an event, traditional long-term care is the way to go because of the leverage that you get out of the premium dollar you pay in. Linked benefit, on the other hand, when we do talk about linked benefit, what we're referring to is a life insurance contract with a long-term care rider or leverage for a long-term care bucket. The beauty of that is since it's a life insurance contract, the premiums are guaranteed, whether it be a single premium or a whole life premium.
So I actually have a life insurance contract with a long-term care embedded rider or an embedded part of the contract that gives me benefits for extended care bills.
Yes, yes. So it'll have a smaller death benefit, and then it'll have possibly 2 to 5 times leverage on that dollar for long-term care.
So if I had $100,000 as an example, if I had $100,000 and I had to trigger an event, my $100,000 cash could be worth $400,000 to pay my bills.
For long-term care.
For long-term care.
Exactly
Okay, okay. Now, it's not just life now. I noticed that you said it's not only life that has this linked ability to have long-term care, but you also have annuities with that.
Yeah, so the annuities can work the same as the linked benefit. They can take a single amount in and then leverage it out 2 to possibly 4 times for long-term care. Or it could have a long-term care rider that applies itself to the income that comes off of the annuity. So you have that guaranteed lifetime income that's being paid to you, that monthly check that you get. And instead of it being $1,000 a month, if you were to have a long-term care event and trigger one of the benefits, the 2 of 6 activities of daily living, or have a severe cognitive impairment event, it could apply leverage to that income at possibly 2 times to 3 times what that annual amount or monthly amount you receive from income is.
Well, the reason I'm thinking that annuities and life insurance with long-term care riders or embedded in the contract, this gives you the ability that if you don't use your long-term care, remember, there are about 30% of the country that will never need extended care benefits, according to present-day stats. I think that's going to go smaller, actually, to be honest with you. But let's just say for today, we're going to use the stats we have. So if the facts are that the third of America is pretty much not going to use this, this helps me because I don't have a crystal ball, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, and so this helps me because if I don't use it, I'm not going to lose it. I have the value of my plan, the value of my money. It's still there, built inside these life insurance contracts and/or my annuity.
Yes.
That's what I'm understanding.
More importantly, you have an asset that somebody else could use.
Do you think the reason why that statement of it, that it's an asset, is so big for you is because I've noticed that affluent clients, now this is really to me this is counterintuitive, that affluent clients seem to like the linked benefits in long-term care than they rather do as far as a standalone contract with long-term care. Is that true?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're seeing it moreover because of the aspect that it has 3 applied benefits to it for traditional long-term or for linked benefit long-term care. We have a guaranteed death benefit, or we have the leverage that can be used for a long-term care event. Finally, there's a liquidity availability on a linked benefit contract. If we do want, say, our $100,000 back or the premium that we've paid in over time, we can reach in that contract and pull that premium dollar back out.
I like the liquidity factor. It kind of gives you a tip-off if the wealthy are using this, right? Wow, I mean, this is kind of a nice idea to think about. Hey, people that really understand money and leverage, they understand this. Now, lastly, before I go out of the break, I'm looking at the kind of expectations that you set when you're building a long-term care plan. I mean, you got to build a plan.
Yeah.
What does that entail?
Well, you know, it entails quite a bit more than just owning a long-term care policy. Let's say that. A lot of times I get approached at cocktail parties. What do you do? Oh, I work in long-term care. They say, oh, I have long-term care insurance. And I ask, what's your plan? And they look at me and say, I haven't a plan. And what that means to me is, if you had an event, do your children know about it? Have you discussed this with your key architects of your financial life and your well-being? So have you incorporated your attorneys, your CPAs, your trusted advisors in the conversation of if you couldn't make decisions for yourself and needed care, what are they supposed to do? When you're sitting at that planning table, have you defined to them what your expectations are if you can no longer take care of yourself?
If you want more information on long-term care, just email me, steve.savant@ashbrokerage.com, and I'll email you our free quote questionnaire for long-term care insurance. The questionnaire will take about 13 minutes. Is your financial security during retirement worth 13 minutes? I'm sure it is. When Bradley and I come back, we're going to talk about the economic leverage of long-term care cash products in the M segment of our show.
Take a close look at your hard-earned dollar. How do you think your money's doing? Are you keeping an eye on it? Is it protected from taxes, inflation, and market risk? Over time, those Washingtons could become Franklins. With tax-advantaged indexed universal life, from one of the largest distributors of indexed universal life, Ash Brokerage.
Well, welcome back to the M segment. I'm Steve Savant, and just a heads up, before moving forward with any of the planning ideas on our show, always consult your tax advisor, legal counsel, and insurance professional. We're talking about the economic leverage of long-term care cash products. Now, Bradley, when we're talking about this, and the last segment was a really good segment for our listeners, I'm looking at the different ways that this can play. I'm looking at, first of all, how do I pay for this? And I noticed that you can do single premium payments, a single deposit. You could do a deposit, 5-year deposit, 7, 10, and some will actually do continual pay. Now, I'm assuming that if I'm going to go ahead and I have a non-performing asset in my portfolio, an asset's really not doing anything. If I use this over here as a single deposit, do I get any kind of economic benefit break for going ahead and doing one deposit?
Usually the best leverage comes from that single asset move. Either a single asset or possibly a 3-pay. That's where we're going to see the best bang for our buck. So really, yes, to answer your question, a single asset would be best.
All right, but if I don't have a single deposit, I don't got that kind of single money laying around, I can kind of ferret these payments out over a 10-year period. And I noticed that you have in here that it actually could be continual pay for the rest of your life if you wanted to.
Definitely.
So you could bring that number down, right? It could elongate the price tag. Now, the discount's not there like you would have in a single product, but some of our middle-class Americans, we don't have the single deposit money to put into this. So I like this cash flow idea better.
Yeah, no, and that's something that we figure out when we're putting together that plan.
When we were talking about the leverage and talking about the actual numbers you can get, I mean, $100,000 deposited into one of these plans could generate $400,000 that would go towards long-term care benefits. 4-to-1, that sounds pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, depending on age, though, it can actually go a little bit higher than that. So you take a younger individual, and you might see all the way up to 5.5 times leverage.
When you look at the potential rate of return on a guarantee, because if you use life insurance in concert with an LTC-linked benefit, what's the kind of number you're looking at the internal rate of return for the life? Because let's say I didn't use it, and I have my guaranteed death benefit. What was my rate of return for that?
It really depends on the time period, obviously. The longer the longevity, the lower the internal rate of return. But you're looking at, it starts out somewhere around 30 to 40%, and then drips down a holding period of 30 years. We'll probably end somewhere around 2.5 to 2%.
Right, so that's everybody lived a long life, healthy life, and now we're just transferring in death benefits guaranteed to somebody else. But if I did use it, and I'm using it now out of the contract, I'm taking that money out, I have a long-term care bill, I have an extended care bill, I get reimbursed by my contract, right? Now, does that money that comes out of that contract, is that a taxable event?
Tax-free.
Tax-free?
Yes.
For long-term care. I can't use it for income.
No, but for a long-term care event, it's
So I have to show a little bit of paper trail here with my reimbursement. If I have an expense, I can go ahead and have them pay for it, but I have to actually show cause. Why did I take this money out?
Absolutely. Although there are a few carriers out there that do have an indemnity benefit that you can tack onto a life insurance contract.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So the difference there is when I trigger an event, and I'm triggering, you just talked about the 2 ADLs, activities of daily living. We trigger the event, we have access to our benefits now. That money's coming out, instead of doing it by the bill or turning in our expenses for whatever we did, it actually triggers a monthly benefit?
Yes. So the current HIPAA limit, or the maximum you can receive without having to show those receipts, is $9,600. However, you can receive a cash benefit from your policy of a stated amount. So let's say your stated amount is $6,000 a month. The insurance company is just writing you a check once you qualify for claim for $6,000 a month.
It doesn't matter what your bills are.
You can render that care anywhere you want, and
So
it doesn't matter.
because it's really you're spending your money.
Yes.
And it's your benefit.
Exactly.
So you could take that. I mean, and again, is that tax-free on indemnification as well?
Yeah, as long as it's under that $9,600
Okay,
mark.
so that's the threshold.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can use this from a life point of view with linked benefits. I could use it from an annuity point of view. Now, I like this annuity kind of idea because a lot of people have money in savings accounts, and people like annuities because they pay pretty good interest, you know, even on the interest guaranteed issue, even though it's not a lot right now because of interest rate markets, and they still like it. They use it as a storage place, and you don't have to pay taxes until you actually use it. But if I have this in an annuity, and I have gain in my annuity, and I use that gain to pay my long-term care, no tax?
No, tax-free. Due to the Pension Protection Act of 2006, those dollars, as long as that annuity was set up properly with the proper definitions, it's going to come out 100% tax-free as long as it's used for a long-term care
Well, I
event.
just heard two things in our segment here. One is you have the leverage of the product itself. I put $100,000 in, I could get $400,000 worth of benefits. Now I have an issue. Oh, I'm taking money out of an annuity that has gain in it, which I thought I'd have to pay tax on. But if it's used for long-term care, that money comes out free to pay that long-term care.
Absolutely.
So I have a tax advantage, and I also have an economic leverage. To me, that is a huge issue. I want to ask you one thing before we get out of here on this break. I want to look at this. Think about you're starting to use this as a hedge for a client's retirement portfolio.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, the philosophical issue.
Well, you were discussing earlier unperforming assets. And over the past 5 years, I would question anybody that owns a CD or has money in an investment account, what type of return they're actually getting on those dollars. So let's say they're getting that 3%, that would be a fairy tale. We can outperform that in one of these linked benefit contracts very wholeheartedly on a consistent basis on guaranteed dollars. So we can take those dollars and then use them and buy you additional time down the road to hedge against an event that might happen where we might have to break up or spend down part of your investment portfolio.
If you want more information on long-term care, just email me at steve.savant@ashbrokers.com, and I'll email our free quote questionnaire for long-term care insurance. The questionnaire will take just 13 minutes. Is your financial security during retirement worth 13 minutes? I'm sure it is. When Bradley and I come back from the break, we'll talk about building out your retirement with extended care cash products in the E segment of our show.
Take a close look at your hard-earned dollar. How do you think your money's doing? Are you keeping an eye on it? Is it protected from taxes, inflation, and market risk? Over time, those Washingtons could become Franklins. With tax-advantaged indexed universal life from one of the largest distributors of indexed universal life, Ash Brokerage.
Well, welcome back to the E segment. I'm Steve Savant, and just a heads up, before moving forward with any of the planning ideas on our show, always consult your tax advisor, legal counsel, or insurance professional. We're talking about building out your retirement with extended care cash products. Well, thank you, Bradley. We're back again talking about long-term care. And I want to talk a little bit about this building. You know, we talked in the first segment, we had to talk about a plan. We want to expand a little bit upon this. We're talking about understanding your family history of health concerns. Now, if that means that, you know, my dad, my mom, my grandparents, what was that happening? My wife's parents, their grandparents, what was their longevity? What was their disposition in their older ages? Were they frail? Did we have a disposition for a certain disease in our family tree? Those things really need to be incorporated in a plan.
Definitely.
Right? Talk a little bit about that, because I think people just look at themselves as an island and, you know, it's just me and I'm just making this because it's me. But really, a lot of the mechanics here have to do with some of our parents and the lineage we come from.
Yeah, no, most definitely. You know, we have to look at both our parents, our grandparents. We have to look at what their state of health was at an older age. Also, if they had a condition that now is treatable or something that might have changed. A lot of times we hear about breast cancer. Breast cancer 15 years ago if you were diagnosed,
It's pretty much a death
success rate
sentence.
was very low. But we look at it today. I mean, the Susan B. Komen Foundation is pulling up in front of corporations and doing exams. They're finding this at an earlier age. All the testing is there. So these are all things, and we look at that as a base case, but we look at all things, and we're adding to the longevity of people's lives through medical advancements. So what we're trying to narrow down is what your family history looks like. Did you have a parent that might have had Alzheimer's? Did you have a parent that had rheumatoid arthritis or some other condition? Diabetes is a very significant factor in long-term care or longevity and quality of life. So these are all questions that we ask, not on an underwriting basis, but on a, what's your likelihood of needing a long-term solution to help fund long-term care?
I noticed that if we have this in place, we have our plan in place, and we understand our family history, I want to know, I see three basic choices every day. Can I get home care? Can I get assisted living facility? Or do I have to go to a nursing home? Can you just give me a little bit of definition on each one?
Well, obviously I'll start with a nursing home. Nursing home is a skilled facility where a person usually goes, and it's usually the last step along the line. It's usually the last place anyone ever wants to go. I would assume that most people, when asked, where would you like to have care, they're going to ask for their home. But a nursing home is where you're going to get the highest level of skilled care, more nurses or RNs, doctors, things of that magnitude. And then assisted living facilities. I jokingly express these as cruise ships on land minus the casino. They really have all things available to you anymore. Fine dining experience. They have restaurants inside. They have internet cafes. This is a live freely, come and go as you please. But these, if you are at the level where you need hands-on assistance or have a cognitive impairment, these facilities do afford you that level of care. And then finally, nursing home, home health care. Home health care is really where everyone wants to be. You're in your home, you're in your bed, you have the availability of your spouse or a loved one to actually come in and take care of you or bring someone in from the outside.
Do they have to qualify if I have one of my children take care of me? Don't they have to be a qualified practitioner?
It depends on the policy that you own, whether you're using private insurance. If you're using your own dollar or self-insuring, you don't need them. You don't need for them to be qualified, obviously. But for certain things, they would need to be qualified for.
Do I really need to talk about a will, power of attorney when I'm talking about this kind of planning inside my retirement?
Not necessarily, but at the same time, these are strategies to make sure that what you wish for is carried out. And it's really your ability to speak when you don't have the capacity to.
I notice that you're really a strong proponent of listing your assets and then listing them not by rate of return, but by liquidity. Which one would you want to liquidate first? So you have kind of a priority in your system to do this, and it dovetails into planning with long-term care.
No, absolutely. When as an advisor or as a trusted advisor to an individual, the question is, especially when they say, I'm going to self-insure for this event, or I don't believe long-term care is worth it, that's irrelevant. We're talking about building a plan for if this were to happen down the road. And one of the major questions is, in the event of a long-term care event, which assets do we need to liquidate first? Because what you don't want to do is take an asset that might have a capital gain or a stock that's been held in the family for years or generations that you wanted to pass down to your children as the asset we use or liquidate first to fund that long-term care event. So it is important that we do understand which assets need to be liquidated and how they need to be liquidated.
You were talking earlier about informing all of the beneficiaries, family members. This plan should be not only with my advisor, but with my family.
Absolutely. One of the most difficult things about the long-term care industry is when something does happen to an individual and you live in Scottsdale, Arizona or Sarasota, Florida, usually the child that's the furthest away makes the most decisions. I don't know how that always works out, but it seems like if you're in Florida and you have a son or daughter that lives in Southern California, they're making the majority of the decisions on where care is going to take place, how it's going to be rendered, and what assets we're going to use. And the child that lives 10 miles down the road, they have no say.
Well, that's our show for today. I want to thank Bradley Gayheart for being my special guest and money mentor. And remember, you can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, or just email me, steve.savant@hashbrokers.com. And don't forget what the good Reverend John Wesley once said, make all you can, save all you can, give all you can. I'm Steve Savant. See you next week.